Alright guys, I just wanted to give a little demonstration on how to use sockets for microcontrollers. Now this one is for the Arduino Uno Atmega 328, which is a 32 pin. It's on a custom board. This is for an STM32 48 pin. It's on two of these prototyping boards. And this is for the Arduino Mega Atmega 2560 100 pin. It's on a custom board. So I'm going to explain how to utilize these and what options you have for these sockets. So alright, you notice this one's just on two of these prototyping boards. And if you notice, it has one row of legs, one row of pins on each side. So I can get away with that. Now on this 100 pin socket, it's got two rows, and so you're going to have conflicting pins. Sometimes there'll be a power and ground right next to each other. So there's no way to use this with these regular prototyping boards, so you will be forced to build a custom board for it. Now the custom board is really handy, and you know, I made it anyways for this one. And what you want to do if you make a custom board is you want to have one of these female headers. I think they're 10 pin or something like that. They're from the Arduino Uno Shield, where you can buy the female headers that all go for an Uno. That's where I got these from. But either way, so you get a 10 pin header. You put a switch in here for reset, and then you want an LED so you can upload a program to make the LED flash to confirm that everything worked. But I've got this set up to where I can take just a regular USB to TTL, and I can just plug it in right like that, and then just plug my USB cord right to it and program it like that. Now these other pins are for burning the bootloader onto the chip. So you got to burn the bootloader, and then you can program it. So that's why I got all these extra pins here, so I can burn the bootloader first. And so yeah. Now the other thing I want to tell you is making the board. Obviously, you're going to have a power supply. I just found a random power adapter, and I threw in a voltage regulator with the correct capacitors. I made some mistakes, had to fix them. You know, this wasn't really meant to be pretty. Just threw it together, and that is my crystal. I'm not positive if you have to have a crystal with a Atmega 2560. I believe you have to have the internal oscillator bootloader to not run the crystal, and I think the regular bootloader on the Arduino IDE requires an external crystal. I could be wrong, but I've been putting a crystal on everything anyways. It ain't a big deal. I use this crystal that has built-in capacitors. That's why it doesn't have the two capacitors with it. So yeah, you make your regular circuit. You got to figure it out. With this 100 pin, it was completely backwards. So you got to really check this stuff. You know, I think the Arduino Uno chip one was laid out pretty intuitively, but this 100 pin one, you know, you can't see it because it's on the underneath side in the silk screening on the board. They have these pins numbered, and it was completely backwards. So up here on the top left, is normally pin 100 on the Arduino or the Atmega 2560. It's pin 1 over here, and then this starts at real pin 100, and then 100 over here, it wraps around, gets a bigger number. 100 over here ends at what would really be pin 1. So it's backwards of what it's supposed to be. So the numbering and stuff could, that's obviously why I had some headaches with this board. Because the numbering is pretty confusing. But once you get it figured out, lay out your board. With this one, you can get by with a single-sided board with just a couple jumpers, You don't have to go full out with a double-sided board. And so what I do is, you can buy these Arduino Megas for like $10 shipped, and just steal the microcontroller off of them, because buying just the loose chip from like DigiKey's $12 when you can get this whole thing for $10. So you steal the microcontroller, and then you got all these components that if you ever need, you could steal and use for a project or something, and you just end up with all kinds of extra components. The voltage regulator is a 1 amp voltage regulator, which is kind of useful. And I really don't even use these USB chips. I always just use this USB to TTL, and I use it for everything, and I don't add that to my projects. But so yeah, once you desolder this with a hot air gun, obviously if you're going to mess with chips like this, you already have a hot air gun. When you go to desolder it, your chip, you probably won't be able to see that, but there's a little solder left on them legs. So what you got to do is take your soldering iron and brush it flat against the legs. Brush it flat against all the legs so they're nice and flat. So you melt that solder down and it doesn't have no high points. And then you go around and you touch each corner to make sure there's no solder sticking out the corner. That way, because when you go to try to put it into the socket, then it don't want to fit right because there's a little bit of solder. So you want to flush that all out with your soldering iron first, and then you put it in your socket. And see, that's when you put them in and they don't get a connection. Normally that's what it's from. I don't really have any other problem. I think that's what all the problems with getting a bad connection really are, is just leftover solder. And usually I do that and then they work just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this in there. Make sure it's sitting flush and all down good. So I'll plug it in here real quick. And this one, it was pulled out of an Arduino Mega, so it had a bootloader already. And I have already uploaded a program to make this blink, and it's not making a connection. So let's see what we can do here for this. Make sure I put it in the right way. Unplug the power if I can. Alright, now I unplug the power. See, bad connections are a little bit of an issue, but you just gotta, once you get a feel for it, you can pretty much just get it to work, Because I've already had this one in here and working, and now it's not wanting to work. Let's just see if it works now. All I did was move everything around, really. Well, it don't want to work. Make sure it's got power. When you first stick this thing in, it'll light up if you do got power. Even though I don't have the 5 volts on it. Oh wow, it started after I put that in there. That's weird. Oh, that's strange. But okay, so I already have this uploaded on here. Let me reset, see if it... So this is my reset button. Now when you're using a USB to TTL, you have to hit the reset button right as it gets... There'll be a little bar here, and right as it gets done compiling, you hit the reset button. And what that does is it makes the microcontroller send a signal telling the IDE that it's ready to take an upload to go ahead. And then the IDE uploads the program. So if it doesn't get that signal, the IDE will not send the sketch. It'll have a problem. So it's all about hitting the reset button at the right time. So we're just going to change this light frequency. And I've already got it set up to change the light frequency, so I'm just going to hit upload. And right as it gets done compiling, I'm going to hit the reset button. But I'm going to have the camera on the socket while it's uploading. So let me see if I can turn it. Turn it a little bit so you can see you're going to be watching for the blue lights for it uploading. So I'm going to click the upload button. And it's compiling. You've seen the blue lights flicker. And now we should be at 3-second intervals. 1, 1000, 2, 1000, 3, 1000. So it changed. So that's all you got to do to upload the program. Got these extra pins to burn a bootloader. If you get chips from, like, I bought some chips from AliExpress, and they, after waiting like 20 days or whatever it was, I got them for like, I forget what it was. I think after shipping and everything, it was like $4.50 a piece, maybe $5 a piece for loose at Mega 2560 chips. Or you can go this route and take them off the boards. And the same thing with the Arduino Uno chips. And I was messing around with STM32s, but I don't know. I actually get things done with Arduino, and when I mess with these STM32s, I just get stuck and have problems just with the uploading part and other parts of it. So I really just stick with these now that I can get them cheap. You know, I'll order 5 or 10 at a time from AliExpress and get them for like $4.50 a piece just for the loose chip. And yeah, so the connection issue, getting the chip to make a good connection on these bigger ones, is a little bit of a tricky thing. But usually, if you use your soldering iron and make sure you're nice and flat, you usually don't have problems. And yeah, I use these sockets a lot. You know, mainly for burning bootloaders and for testing chips, but mainly for burning bootloaders is the main reason I use them. So yeah, you know, like this one, this is the Arduino Uno, or at Mega 328. You know, I just put the regular crystal and the capacitors and the voltage regulator, and then I forgot to put the capacitors for the voltage regulator. I've made things in the past, you know, I made this a long time ago, but I made things in the past before that where I could just use the voltage regulator and ignore putting in the capacitors, and that just didn't work in this setup. So I had to put the capacitors on the voltage regulator. So, and then it's got a reset button and a light and enough pin headers for bootloader and programming. So where you just you do it right, you can just stick this thing right in the pin header, and it's really convenient. So, I hope I told you something that is useful to you in this little video. Alright, later.